So let's take a closer look at some tools and safety equipment that you will likely need on an above ground storage tank inspection. Obviously there's a lot of things we've talked about already. We're just going to dive a little deeper on a few items and try to relate them specifically to the tank inspection. So obviously there's the PPE that you would need. You've seen me always wearing the safety vest. That's a common thing for a lot of clients, but it's a good thing to always wear. Makes you very visible on sites. Safety glasses, safety gloves. There's a variety of gloves. Safety glasses, there's basic ones, but these are pretty standard for when you start to take things apart. You may be exposed to a variety of different things. So eyewear, pretty straightforward. You might be in situations at different sites where they require refineries or different things they require you to wear a lot more in terms of hard hats. Obviously steel toe boots would be needed, but those are some of the basics. Earlier we talked about if you were going inside of a tank or if you were climbing on top of a tank, you would need a fall arrest system. You would also want to have a lot of training, confined space training, OSHA 10-hour, OSHA 30-hour, 40-hour, different things like that. But let's talk about what an actual fall arrest system is. So I have an example here of just a basic personal arrest system with a harness. This is a very simple, lightweight harness. This is the D-ring that goes in your back. These are your shoulder straps. It's very lightweight, easy to wear all day long while I'm climbing up on top of a tank. It doesn't weigh me down. There's other brands that are much heavier and bulkier, and you're sweating a lot when you're wearing them. This one's very lightweight and simple. If you're doing an internal tank inspection and you've got number 6 oil or something on this, you'd want to throw it away, but these don't break the bank. So these are nice. They have the side positioning D-rings. The back D-ring is the one, obviously, that you're always going to clip your lanyard to, which we're about to get into here in a second. So fall arrest system, most important thing with these is always inspect them before you put them on. These usually have dates and they're good for a certain amount of time. So always inspect them. A couple things in terms of lanyards. So the lanyards come in all different shapes and sizes. This is a 3-foot lanyard. This is the shock pack. This would obviously go to the back like we just talked about. And then this is called a rebar clip. It's a smaller opening that's easy to clip onto rebar. It's more for positioning while you're climbing around. It doesn't give you a lot of length. A lot of these are usually used when you're on a man lift or a JLG boom lift, something like that. You can put this on your back and clip right off to the side of the controls. So that's what these short ones are great for. If we're climbing on top of a tank, these are great for that. So this would go to my back. This is the small hook here. And then these two larger grabs have larger openings of gates. And these are great for clipping on to an actual, maybe a tank lifting ring or something that's on top of the tank. Again, we don't want to connect to anything unless it's 5,000 pound rated or greater. And how would I know what that is? If it's a welded item to a tank, I know that that would probably hold 5,000 pounds, but I wouldn't want to clip to a conduit or something like that. So these larger openings allow us to clip off to, again, something that's pretty big as opposed to the smaller one that I had in my hand a minute ago. You can tell the difference. So the other benefit with having these is that they have the elastic, so they pull up out of the way. So as I'm climbing around on top of a tank, I'm not going to trip over these if they're extended all the way. The other benefit of having two, right, so each of these would be hanging on either side of me, is it allows me to always be tied off at all times. So the rule is as soon as you get above the 6 feet, you want to be tied off 100% of the time. By having 2 points for my lanyard and my fall arrest system, I can clip off to one thing, be performing my inspection, and then let's say I want to walk a few feet to the left or I need to climb a ladder, I can clip off with the next one, disconnect, and so on and so forth. And so that's what these two D-rings on the lightweight aluminum lanyard allows us to do. So this is a great system. In other situations, you may be on a tank or you may be on a structure or vaulted something, and you want to clip off and then just walk across the entire top of the tank. And there may be one fixed point that maybe the site has that you can clip off to, and you don't want to just keep unclipping and clipping and unclipping and clipping. And so an easy thing to use on those is these retractable systems. This is a larger one. This is about 50 feet long of cable. that comes out, you would clip yourself to this. This will be clipped to the secure point that's rated for 5,000 pounds or greater. And then if you were to fall, this would lock in as you fall, and it senses that and it stops it. So it might stop at a foot or two, it depends. But these are great for, again, being able to clip these off and secure these, clip these to the back of yourself, and you can walk freely back and forth and perform your inspection and not have to unclip and reclip or get tangled up in small little lanyards. So that's a great item for your fall arrest system. The next thing we want to do before we would start disconnecting piping, going inside of a tank, anything of that sort, is we would want to lock out and tag out the system. And so we would have a kit that looks something like this. It's a little just job box, and it has an assorted bunch of different things. I'm going to go through just one main item. The ones that we use, we typically take pictures of everything so they're all laid out. We have our date and time of what we used and how we installed it. When you would lock out and tag out something, I have my padlock and my key and my little identifier that I put on the item that I lock out. So let's say we're going to inspect the tank and we want to isolate all the piping, and there's a lot of ball valves. Not all the ball valves have a locking port where you can close the ball valve and then just slip your padlock through it. So sometimes the ball valves may be one like this, and we want to close the ball valve and then we want to secure it. So lots of companies sell these. You can find them online, but this would clip over top of the handle of the ball valve, and then you would secure your padlock to this with your tag, and then you keep the key. You don't leave the key on the site. You don't hand the key to somebody else. You keep the key. And now, as you go and maybe disconnect some piping, you need to inspect the overfill valve or the other components of the tank, you know that that valve is isolated and fuel can't come into the tank or fuel can't come through that pipe if you're going to disconnect it and perform your inspection. So you need to have a good, thorough lockout tagout kit. Ours have nice pictures of all the different examples of how to use these little components. Sometimes it takes a little bit to play with them, but you need to have this. You never know what you're going to run into, so having a good assorted kit with all the different types of connections is an invaluable tool when you're performing an inspection. So we talked about this, and another thing. So we've talked about this already a couple times in the course, and lighting is important. There's all kinds of different lights. If I'm inside of a tank, I would want to have a variety of lights so that I'm not just able to see something from one angle. Bright LED, small little lights when we're looking inside of emergency vents. Big, bright, battery-powered lights that last for a long time when maybe I'm looking for pitting on a floor. A great tool with a bright light like this is to lay it down at an angle and shine the light across, and I can see blistering and a coating possibly. So you don't just want to have one type of light. Bad idea. Multiple lights, multiple sizes. You don't want to run out of your batteries while you're on site. So flashlights and bright flashlights is a must. We've talked about assorted keys, but if you've ever been to a site where there are dispensers and there are different things for dispensing systems and you need to inspect the valves, is there a shear valve or something like that? One key is not going to do it. There are a multitude of keys. Don't rely on the owner having the keys. So make sure that you bring a good assorted set of keys. You can usually get these at your local supplier for fuel equipment. Sometimes you can even find them online, but they are available. One key usually fits a lot of different brands, and there's usually a generic 5 or 6 keys, but make sure you have a good assortment. Next would be, we've talked about and disconnected several different things, but there's lots of different pipe wrenches, and I just wanted to go over 2 different kinds. So this is an 18-inch steel, and this is a 24-inch aluminum. They're 2 totally different weights. We typically use aluminum pipe wrenches because they're a lot easier to handle on top of a tank. So if I'm on top of a 10,000 gallon tank and I'm tied off with my fall arrest system and I'm pulling on a 3-foot steel wrench, it's a lot heavier. It's a lot harder to handle versus a 3-foot aluminum wrench. I can easily hold it with one hand and reposition it. So they come in all shapes and sizes. Don't go with a cheap wrench. Go with the good brands. But aluminum is typically the way to go because, again, the bigger the wrench, they triple in weight. So the last thing we want to go over is if we had to go inside of a tank. So if we had to go inside of the tank and perform confined space, again, you need the proper training. and you need the proper equipment. But one component that is critical would be a explosive gas meter, confined space meter, LEL meter. They have lots of different names, but basically they're monitoring multiple gases inside of a confined space. So this is an example of one, and this tubing here is what we would connect to the end of it and then lower down inside the tank. So if you have the meter and you show up at the site, but you need to perform an interior inspection, you can't check the air inside of that environment by just holding this in your hand, or maybe this doesn't have a pump. So don't buy the cheap one, buy something that's going to last for a long time. This exact model has 4 gases that it can measure: oxygen, carbon monoxide, hydrogen sulfide, and then lower explosive limit. So those are the 4 most critical things when we're performing a tank inspection and going inside of a tank. We have these routinely calibrated before we go out on the site once a month. We also bump test them while we're on site and zero them out. We always take a backup with us too. I don't want to go through the whole expense of mobilizing to a site to do an inspection and then get there and my confined space meter isn't working, and so now I have to come back to do the confined space inspection. So maintain your tools and equipment, and if you can, bring a backup flashlight, bring a backup confined space meter. It will save you a lot of time and money. So those are a couple tips on some of the tools that you may use. Safety first, and make sure you plan ahead and bring as many things as you might need so that you don't have to come back.